Hello, she is back again, and by she I mean me. I wanted to talk for a second about an interview that Quinta Brunson, the head writer, is she the head writer? Yeah. Is she the showrunner? I think so. I know she's the creator, and she is the star of Abbott Elementary. I wanted to talk for a second about an interview that she did with Amy Poehler. First of all, let's talk a little bit about Amy Poehler having a YouTube channel and having a podcast and how weird that is for people who grew up with Amy and Tina in the 2010s, okay? In the 2000s and the 2010s. I used the word weird here, and what I meant was surprising. There's nothing weird about somebody using a platform or a media format that is accessible to everybody. But it is surprising the candor with which Amy has kind of embraced it. It is not something that I associate someone of her stature as doing because I don't see it often. Normally, I feel like people are just chasing down the next big show, the next big film, and they don't have time maybe to devote the way she has done herself to a podcast and to social media in this way. Um, that's what I mean. I don't mean weird. And I also think that just because I'm a fan of hers and I'm about to talk about how much of a fan of hers I am, it was very startling to see her in my territory. You know what I'm saying? Like when I saw Keke Palmer's podcast a couple years ago, I was like, oh, okay. But I had kind of seen Keke always very active on social media. And, she's several years younger than me. So she's a part of that generation that grew up with it. Um, but seeing Amy, somebody from her generation, somebody who's accomplished as much as she has in my neck of the woods, in this social media neck of the woods, I'm just like, wait, what? And it makes it all the more like real how social media has sort of erased the boundaries. Like, for example, Amy brings up corporate Aaron on her podcast with Quinta. And, I went over to corporate Aaron's Instagram, and I love this creator and I love this character. And she was flipping out, as she should have. Like, it's just so crazy how the giants of the industry will find their ways into these spaces. And for little old people like me, I'm just like, whoa, what are you doing here? But I don't mean weird in a negative way. I mean surprising. And I wanted to get that straight. Okay, back to the video. For 20 years, those two women ran mainstream comedy from like the female angle, in my opinion. Okay. We had Tina with SNL, being a head writer on SNL, and then leaving SNL to be the head writer and star of 30 Rock. And I remember when I was in college and I did this like little comedy show with some other people that were in my college, people would say to me all the time, you are the Black Tina Fey. This is before Issa Rae was even a thought, okay? When Issa Rae came out, it was, you are Issa Rae. You're an awkward Black girl. And then when Abbott Elementary came out, it was, you're just like Janine. We don't have a lot of, they didn't have a lot of people. I don't know. It's the examples are very predictable. I'll just say that. But Tina did that, and then she did 30 Rock, which was just this juggernaut when it came to awards and the kind of show it was at the time. And what's so crazy is I've gone back and watched 30 Rock, and I sit through episodes that I used to like. I think it was because it was so absurd. That's what I think. But I've gone back and tried to watch it, and I don't get it. Is that weird to say? Like, when it was on, it was the best thing since sliced bread for me. But when now watching it years later, I didn't laugh at all. And maybe I like a different kind of humor now. I think that might be what it is. But when 30 Rock was on, it was gold. Then you had Amy also starting off at SNL. Amy then coming through with Parks and Recreation. And you know what I learned? Michael Schur, I've always known this, but Michael Schur, he is a writer. He's responsible for The Office. He's responsible for Parks and Rec. He's also responsible for The Good Place. Michael Schur loves to write a show with a blonde woman who's figuring out society. He loves that. He loves to do it. But he's good at it. He's good. His shows are always so well written and so good. And Parks and Rec was such an important part of my life. Like, I watched 30 Rock and was just, again, blown over by how absurd it was. But I watched Parks and Rec, and it was just so good for the soul. Like, the first time I watched the Harvest Festival episode, I cried. Oh no, that wasn't the one. It was the one where she celebrates Ron's birthday. Ron is he's worried all day about what Leslie's going to do for his birthday, and eventually, like at the end of the episode, she gives him his very favorite everything for his birthday: peace, a good steak, a good whiskey, and a Western on the TV. And y'all, I cry. I was like, this show is just pitch perfect. It's so good. I think when little Sebastian died, I cried. I don't know. Like, that show was so good. Do you know, I still have never watched the last episode. It's been 10 years since Parks has been off the air, and I've never seen the last episode because I don't want to say goodbye to my friends. So anyway, very connected to both of these women and their work. I used to think that I was going to become a TV writer by entering into one of the many television writing competitions that were out in the 2010s that were a part of these like diversity initiatives. They're probably gone now. I don't know. But ABC had one, CBS had one, Fox had one, and NBC had one. And back in like 2011, I wrote a pilot for Parks and Recreation. And it was about the Sweetums Candy Company developing a candy that caused radioactive nuclear storm. Girl, I don't know. I didn't get picked, but that's how important the show was to me. I was like, if I'm going to be a writer in Hollywood, I want to write on Parks. And I like knew everybody's name, and I knew I was involved. Okay. And then we have these women, they leave this and then they go on to writing movies. And I think one of the most important things Amy did was be the voice of joy in the Inside Out movie series. That was such an important movie to me, both as a person and even as a teacher. When I was a teacher, I used to do such cool projects with the kids based on Inside Out. So these women they just did a lot. And then I think as evidence of, I don't know if it's the diminishing law of returns or just how time moves and changes us all and changes what we like, and how eventually it's time for new people to come up and do something. You started hearing from them less and less. I think Tina really took a step back. I mean, she gave us so much. And then Leslie, Amy, you didn't hear from as much, as far as them starring in things and doing whatever. And so it was really weird for me to see them pop up, especially Amy, to see her pop up on TikTok. I was like, girl, what you doing? You on TikTok? No, you too good for TikTok. I think because they've done so much, I tend to look at social media as like a huge step down from doing actual certifiable, real TV and movie production. But the crazy thing is, and Keke Palmer talked about this in a recent episode that she did with, Baby, This is Keke Palmer. She talked about how the movie industry is so unpredictable and it's so hard to push things through, movie and TV. It's so hard to push things through, to get things made, that if you want some kind of consistent income, a lot of people have made the decision to come to social media, whether that's having a TikTok account, whether that's being active on their Instagrams, whether that is starting a podcast and putting your episodes on YouTube and having them on TikTok and having them on Instagram Reels. It is a way of practicing some kind of continuity in this very, very inconsistent world of entertainment. And so I understand that, but it still doesn't shield me from the absolute shock that I feel seeing them pop up on my feeds. Like, y'all are supposed to be in your gilded cages. What are you doing out here with the common folk? But here they are, right? And so Amy has this new podcast, and it's called Good Hang with Amy Poehler, and I've watched every episode. And it's been so great to see her and the people that she interviews, because I was such a student of comedy writing for so long, as far as knowing who worked on what show and hoping one day to be a part of it and join them all. And I've just been having a great time listening to these conversations. I think one of my favorite episodes is her with Rashida Jones. I love that episode. And then she just did an episode with Quinta Brunson. Now, Quinta, of course, is sort of a Hollywood anomaly in a lot of ways. And on the episode, she gives her birth time. So y'all know I was rushing. I was rushing to get that birth chart read. I was like, okay, let me look at it. Let me look at this. And I was thinking she might have some of the placements she had, most specifically a Jupiter placement in her 10th house, which is like your house of career and really career expansion. I knew she did. I knew she had that in there, and that was in there. But yeah, she's just a Hollywood anomaly. Like the things she's been able to do and the path that she's been able to take. I don't think it's something that you can say it can be replicated. You know, some people can be like, oh, she was like the second Issa Rae. We had Issa. But I feel like Issa worked so much. This is not going to sound right, but I feel like Issa put out so much more to get where she got than Quinta did. Issa ran a social media platform, monster for like 7 years. I've gone back sometimes and looked at her channel, and I wasn't even aware of all of the series and comedy specials and documentaries and then Awkward Black Girl. Like on top of that, she was producing so much before she finally got her opportunity to do it for real for HBO with Insecure. Whereas Quinta, I feel like she just rolled in and just went from strength to strength to strength, and do I know these people? No, I don't know what she was doing behind the scenes, but what I do know is what I didn't see, right? And I just feel like Issa was putting out a lot more to get where she got, and Quinta sort of came through and was just able to just do incredible things and walking the path that she walked, which eventually led her to being the showrunner and star of Abbott Elementary. I did an episode before where I talked about Abbott, and I talked about how it was difficult for me to watch initially. And I want to say this, I at first did not want, or for years when Abbott first came out, I was like, oh, I'm not interested in letting people know that part of my connection to that show, because I don't think it will be received well. And I felt that way for a couple of reasons. The first reason is it was a Black show. And if you know anything about Black entertainment and what it means to Black people, you know that we tend to be very protective about our art and how it is critiqued and how it is talked about. Very protective. We do not besmirch a Black artist or Black art, especially if it's something that made us look good. If it's something that makes us look, and by us, I do mean an entire community, because we project like hell. If one Black person does it, we all are doing it. And if it's a good thing, if it makes us look good, we need to protect it. And so when Quinta came out and she had this show, and I saw people loved it, I said, I'm going to sit my PTSD having former teacher ass down somewhere, and I'm just not going to say nothing. When people would ask me about, well, how do you feel about Abbott Elementary? You watching Abbott Elementary? I was like, it's funny. Knowing I hadn't seen a damn thing. I lied for years until I finally started to watch it in 2023, a whole 2 years after it came on. And I was like, okay. And in that process, I allowed myself to fully take in the show. And part of how I took in the show was formed by my former experiences as a teacher. And I finally felt comfortable talking about just how uncomfortable I was with the show when I started to see other teachers, no matter their race, just teachers say, it might be a great show. It might be award winning. Give it a Pulitzer. Give it a Mark Twain. Do whatever you can. I don't want to watch a show about this job when I get home from this job. I don't want to do it. And so I saw people felt that way, and I was like, oh, okay. It wasn't just me. I can finally be honest about how I felt about Abbott, especially since now I love it so much, and I am able to see and experience like healing in really weird ways from these incredible episodes. These are wonderful. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about that process that I took. I forgot about the rule. You can't criticize a Black show. You can't criticize, especially not one that makes us look good. Girl, what? Even if you're not criticizing the show itself, even if you're just saying, yo, like as a former teacher, this was not just entertainment for me. Like I was way too, and I had to check myself. And this is where I had to, people aren't going to be able to go there with you. All they're going to hear is you're making fun of something that is good. You have a problem with something that's good. And that makes us mad. How dare you? And I say people felt that way because I read the comments. Now, initially, I just dropped the video off, and normally my reviews of TV shows don't get that many views, don't make me that much money. You know, it's stuff that I do in an attempt to shift the energy a little bit on this channel. And I wanted to talk about that, so I did. But I just left the video and went. I came back about a week later and checked the comments, and I was like, okay, so how many people feel they need to remind me that Abbott is not a documentary? Are y'all serious? I could not believe how many people had taken the time out to let me know, well, it's not a real show, you dumbass. It's just supposed to be, you stupid. And what's so crazy is my process for how I felt about the show mirrors so many other people's processes when it comes to how they take in content. So for example, with The White Lotus, when people were saying that they did not believe that Belinda was poor because poor people don't have $12,000 in their bank account. Well, if that's your experience, if you've never had $12,000 in your bank account and you can only imagine how great life would be if you did, I can imagine you thinking that that makes her rich. But if you have had $12,000 in your bank account and it's been wiped out in seconds by your mortgage, childcare, car note, utilities, paying down student loans, credit card bills, you don't went from $12,000 to $5,000 in seconds, and then you got to put some in savings and buy groceries. Now you sitting at about $2,500. That's a lot of money, but I'm just saying that people can. I mean, that's a lot of money to lose quickly, but it happens. So it's all about perspective. It's all about how your experience, forms and shapes the lens that you take things in with. There were also comments when I was watching the show. Somebody said that Ratliff, the mom, I think her name was Victoria Ratliff in the show, she kept screaming about her lorazepam. Where is my lorazepam? The whole time her husband is eating it. Her husband's taking it. And so she ain't got her pills. People were like, oh, she would have went into bad withdrawal if she wasn't able to keep up with her dosage. As somebody who's never taken, that didn't even come into my mind. I didn't even think about that. How you experience life and what you've experienced is going to frame your lens when you're taking in content. And if somebody who was a teacher says this show was not fun, escapist comedy for me because I barely escaped from working in classrooms, I didn't think this wasn't funny. I was like, ain't not a goddamn thing funny about public schools. That's how I felt when I left the classroom. And this is why. And then I give you stories from my life to back it up, and you still sit up there and say, I can't believe you would have these feelings. Where does this come from? You would say something negative about this show? Woo! The problem is not with me, it's with you. And your inability to say, oh, it's because of her experiences. Oh, I can imagine. I find that a lot. I find people tend to be very exclusionary. Like, okay, this is the only way we can, instead of inclusionary. And somebody even brought up in the comment section, they brought up that I could understand where Megan was coming from, but not Abbott. And then they wrote, make it make sense. And I responded to this person, why don't you make it make sense? Why don't you try and do a little bit of connective thinking there? Because when I did my video about Megan and her show With Love, Megan, I talked about my journey with her. I didn't start off as a Megan Sussex fan. No, that wasn't it at all. But I went on a journey and I described it just like I described it with Abbott. If I take the time to describe to you how I got from point A to point B, and you still asking me about point A, man, that pisses me off. Now, that's a reality about being on the internet, unfortunately. But woo, that made me so mad. I got to a point where I was going in and chopping people up in the comments, and I said, girl, didn't nobody even watch this video for real? Like, this video made you about $50. Do not be out here looking crazy, yelling at people, snapping. They don't want to do the work. They want you to make it make sense for them. They're not worth you going back and forth with them about, honestly. Like, you've explained yourself. And another thing, this video only made you $50. There's no reason to do all this. And what made it really sad is they done missed the point of the video. And shout out to all of you who actually got the real point of the video, which was watching these things happen and these things unfold, particularly in the romantic relationships that Ava and Janine were enjoying, was incredibly healing for someone like me. That was the point of that video. But anyway, so I have a history with not only watching Abbott, but being received very negatively when I offer any critique of Abbott that's not. I laugh at it. It is funny. If I have anything to say that's not that, then I'm gonna get my ass chopped up. And now I'm aware of it. Now I'm aware of how y'all work. So, okay, I'm ready. When Quinta got on with Amy and she was like, yeah, one thing I wasn't prepared for was the pushback from black women about Janine. I was like, ooh. Because notice, when I critique Abbott, it wasn't nothing that actually had to do with Abbott. It was me looking at the show through my lens and through my experiences. It wasn't nothing wrong with that show, which is the point that I eventually came to, in case you missed it, because some of y'all be missing stuff. But the point was, this is a solid show. It's a good show, and the choices that they make are to serve their narrative purpose. It is what it is. Outside of that, I don't see a lot of problems with Abbott, and I especially don't see any problems with Janine. But then I had to step back and I had to say, oh, that's the second part about being a black creator or looking at black art that you have to be aware of. Excuse me. As protective as we are about other people talking about it or even us talking about it negatively, we are also hypercritical of our representation. So if we feel it's good, everybody stay away from this show. Don't you dare say anything bad about it. It's good. This is what. But if we think it's bad, and by the way, bad involves any negative portrayal of romantic relationships that a black woman might have, any negative portrayal of familiar relationships, things that might go down in a family, any negative portrayal of a black person, and they maybe don't have the perfect personality. When I watched Insecure late, right? I didn't watch Insecure at first because it was too close to home. This is a process for me. If I feel like you're reheating my nachos, that's something that you'd say, okay? So if you don't know what that means, whatever. But if I feel like you're too close, I'm not watching that. It's not escapism. Ain't nothing funny. What we laughing at? When them kids were clowning Issa for her natural hair, I was like, ooh, that happened to me. That ain't funny. I don't want to watch this. Had to come back years later. I came back 5 whole years. Wait. I came back 2 years after the final episode had aired and watched the whole thing for the first time and was overwhelmed with joy. I thought it was so well done. It was so good. And I didn't see a lot of the issues with the characters that a lot of people had. People ripped Molly apart. She's a I was like, you can't see. Nuance is a bad word. Nuance is a very bad word when it comes to black representation on camera and how it is interpreted and processed through the lens of black viewers. We don't like it. We like to see, and I say we, I'm not including myself, I'm talking about some of y'all, you like to see perfection. Let her be bougie black and perfect. Let her drop in with her funny little bougie black one-liners and leave. And by her, anybody, right? We're very, very hard on the concept of imperfection. We're very, very hard on it. I saw it recently with Issa Rae's One of Them Days. Folks, mad at SZA's character. I can't believe she went through all this just for some. Well, apparently you've never had. Let me stop. Listen, I've never done that, but I've been close. Okay, so hey, no judgment, and also remember, it's not a documentary. It's just meant for fun. Anyway, I saw a lot of that come back on them. And then people found out that Issa Rae wrote this, but she didn't grow up poor, so she never would have lived this lifestyle. And that's a whole nother thing. That's another thing with being, with talking about or critiquing black art. We're very hypercritical about people's background. Do they even have the right to be saying this? What is their background to even be participating and calling themselves a contributor to black art in any way? And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole I want to go with this, but that's another thing. People found out Issa Rae grew up going to good schools, being raised by... What? And she writes this show about these poor black women? When Quinta said she got pushback, I was like, yeah.
the show doesn't care what the audience thinks. That was a challenge with Janine because I'll be real with you, she's a Black character. Black audiences have so few still representative characters on screen. Mm-hmm. And Black womanhood alone is still touchy. So when a lot of women were seeing Janine not present as they wanted her to, that became tough. And I understand it. But I think it's important for us to have characters who are more realistic than they are the absolute best representation of us. I think it creates layers for us, not only on TV, but in the public eye.
It didn't occur to me to ever criticize Janine because I was Janine. And I don't mean was Janine like, I'm the nice one and I'm actually more like Melissa than I am like anybody else in that cast. Miss Shementi, the redhead, that's actually my personality when you get down to it. But the awkward one, the one who doesn't always have it together, the one who wears weird outfits. One time I took my sweater off in class and this little boy goes, "Damn, what she got on?" I thought it was cute. Apparently it wasn't. There was more than one occasion where teachers had to bring me, a teacher brought me a bag of wigs to school to choose from because she didn't think I was taking care of my hair properly, and she wasn't wrong. I was Janine. It did not occur to me to look at her and be like, what a weirdo. She's not put together perfectly. But when Quinta said that, I was like, that is something that I've run into also as a Black content creator. I remember when I first started just being hyper aware that people were looking at everything. And sometimes I would introduce myself, I'd have on a new wig or something, and I'd be like, "Hi, welcome to my channel. Oh my God, what is this wig I'm wearing? I look so stupid." And it was a defense mechanism to say it before somebody in the audience would say it. But you know what? Somebody in the audience would still say it in the comments. And then somebody else in the comments would be like, "I don't like that you always call yourself out because of your hair or your clothes." Okay, well, I'm trying to beat y'all. And then I realized I'm never going to beat y'all. I'm never going to beat people that want to come at me that way. So I might as well just present myself the way I can present myself and go. It's not going to stop people from saying, "You shouldn't wear wigs. You should be proud of your natural hair." It's not going to stop people from saying, "Have you ever thought about a wig?" It's not going to stop people from saying, "Why do you always feel like you have to have on lashes? They do not look good on you." It's not going to stop people from saying, "Have you ever thought about lashes?" Being hypercriticized as a Black woman who chooses to present publicly is part of the game. And I just didn't realize that people were taking that to Janine, because I was Janine when I worked in schools. As far as like how I presented, I did not have it all together. I was not one of those teachers with nails always done, perfect outfit on, shoes match, my tennis shoes match the color of my pants and my sweater. You walk in my classroom, I've got, all my degrees all over the wall. No hair out of place. That was not me. I came to school one time. I'm not going to go into another side story, but let's just say I actually looked at Janine as being very well put together. If you need to know anything else about me, I look at her and I'm like, she got that shit on. No, when I see her dresses and whatever, we have a problem in the Black community with accepting imperfections, and we don't always tend to support different types of things, nuanced types of things, quirky things. Now, I will say that sometimes we don't even get a chance to support it because we don't even know it's out there before they go and cut it. And that's just a general state of, the entertainment world these days. But in general, you can't complain about not getting things. And then when you get it, trash it. Oops, there goes me interrupting myself. Oh my. I want to add something here really quickly. It's not just Black audiences that do this. It's any marginalized audience that does this. If you remember a couple years ago, there was a controversy with Constance Wu, and she was the star of a show called Fresh Off the Boat. And I've talked about her on this channel before in an interview that she did with Megan Sussex a little while back. But Constance talks about how when she came forward and basically spoke really negatively about Fresh Off the Boat. Now, according to her, she had reasons for this. It was because she was being sexually harassed and treated poorly behind the scenes, and she was looking for a way to get out of the show. And she'd been kind of suffering silently and was hoping that, she was going to be set free really organically by the show not getting renewed. But when they did get renewed, she sort of just let it all go. And she chose to do that publicly on her Twitter and was disowned by the Asian Hollywood mafia, I guess you can say. That's a really ugly way of putting that. But just, I think people tend to build communities around their otherness when you get into specific places. So, you have Black Hollywood, you have Latino Hollywood, and you have Asian Hollywood. And Constance became a really quick, like, outsider. And there were people that even suggested that she take her life because she had embarrassed the entire Asian race by spitting in the face of this great opportunity. Now, these people might not have known what she was dealing with. And I think we can all agree that she chose to respond really unprofessionally. But the onus was on her as somebody who had this position in this kind of sacred space. She was an Asian American woman in a television show that was doing very well in the ratings, and it was an all Asian American cat. Like, you don't see this. And so you handle it with care and you protect it no matter what. And she didn't. And I think you see this with a lot of shows that do have casts that are minority casts. There's much more weight on them to not only, be a success, but to be a good representative of that success. No matter what else is going on, no matter what's happening off screen, make sure it doesn't project badly on the population that you're representing. So Black audiences aren't the only audiences that are protective and that are very, very judgmental and that are hypercritical of their people on stage. But as a Black creator and as a Black woman, I'm obviously sensitive to what Quinta is talking about, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I know it's not just us. It's literally every audience where you have a group of minorities who are able to, or a minority led whomever, maybe major personality, head writer, whatever, and they're able to get in this position. You better represent and represent well. We don't have time for your imperfections because there are very few of us that even get to your spot. And that's unfortunate, because it doesn't allow sometimes for the humanity of the person to shine through. But anyway, I just want to make it clear. I know it's not just the Black community. It's any marginalized community that gets put in this position, or that has a person that's put in this position that is now responsible for presenting a good example of who we all are. That's not fair, but it happens all the time. Okay, back to the video. I had no idea that they were coming for her like that because of Janine. And that's probably because I was not involved in any Abbott conversations for the first 2 years, because it wasn't a fun little escapee show for me. That was not my vibe. But when she said that, and she said, that it had hurt her, and she said, but she understood it. She understood that it's because of a lack of representation. True, true, true. And I don't even think that. I think, yeah, it's a lack of representation. Yeah. But also, the onus is on her to, because of the lack of representation, the onus is on her to present a caricature that people can identify with and that they can feel proud of, right? And so I had said in my video where I talked about Abbott a couple weeks ago, I said I think they made a decision for her not to be with Tyreek on purpose because we needed something positive for Janine. Her mama ain't shit, her man ain't shit. Let her have this boyfriend. Let her be with this man. And you know what? I think that's probably another reason why I felt like Janine and Gregory weren't accurate. And it's because as the teacher who was a little awkward, who was more worried about the kids than like what I looked like that day, who came to work in athleisure, whose hair sometimes might look cute, sometimes might not, who didn't always have my nails done, I wasn't the one that was being lusted after. I wasn't the one that was being considered, as the girlfriend type. I knew those teachers. I was friends with them. Sometimes they would make me a wig. But I think I felt a little triggered by the idea of Janine being good enough for someone who seemed just a little bit more straight-laced. But of course, we find out Gregory is whatever. But that also, I think, maybe triggered me. That was a very personal thing. But yeah, it never occurred to me to be critical of Janine because that was so similar to who I am as a person and who I was as a teacher. But when she called that out, I was like, yes, what you're describing is a very universal experience, I think, that Black creators have, especially Black women. And it's this weight of having to present perfection. And if you don't, good luck to you. We might not have a lot of all Black shows on TV anymore. This is not the 90s, But I definitely can think of, right off the top of my head, different shows with a black actress, and they're all different. Just right now, the shows that have been released, we've got The Residence on Netflix with Uzo, and then you've got White Lotus, right, with Natasha, and then you've got Abbott Elementary with Quinta and with Ava and with, you know, all their names, right? All different characters of black women, all different types. I guess for me, maybe it's because of the time I grew up in, where we did see a lot of all black cast. We did see that. I guess I don't have that like wound of lack of representation. I actually prefer, this is something I'm finding out about me, I prefer if I can't relate to it, because then I can escape within it, right? I like to see us there, but you don't have to be like me to be there. Just don't be traumatizing to me if you are there. You know what I mean? But you don't have to be exactly like me. And I think it's wonderful when you have different types. I love the fact that Abbott has all these different types of black women as archetypes. I think that's amazing. And it 100% reflects what I've experienced, both as a content consumer and as somebody who just lives life a certain way. And that has shaped my lens. I'll close this video out like I closed my last video out with Abbott. Abbott Elementary is the best show on TV. Why? Because it is a show that takes our feelings into account. Even after they fired Ava, they gave my girl a huge bump once she got out into the real world, which was a great example of how sometimes people whose personality doesn't fit within the strict bureaucratic requirements of working in the traditional school system. It was a great example of how you can get out in the real world and there's still things you can do and places that want you and ways you can make money. And it actually made me feel very made me feel very warm inside. And then we came back and we had the next episode with them doing the fundraiser and Gregory stepping in as the principal. And I want to tell y'all, Gregory as the principal makes me feel so good in my bones. As somebody who has left jobs when the administrator that I trust leaves, Gregory is the type of administrator that I trust. And he's the type of person that when I walked in a school and somebody like that introduces himself to me and says, I'm the principal, I'm like, we gonna be all right. We gonna be all right. There's nothing more comforting than knowing you have a good captain at the helm of things, and an administrator that takes it seriously and that takes his job seriously and then has a sense of professionalism. Oh, male, female, whatever. I just, that made me feel so good in my soul. I almost texted somebody, hey girl, you remember me from like 6 years ago? I just want to tell you thank you. I should have texted her. I probably will. But anyway, gonna end this episode like I ended the last one where I talked about Abbott. It is the best show on TV because it's not out there to break our hearts. It's there to make us feel good. It is a good show. And as a show run by a black woman and led by a predominantly black cast, it is an anomaly like none other. It should be protected. Criticizing something, though, is not a lack of protection, but it is an invitation to examine why you feel the way you feel when taking in certain types of content. That's what it is. Criticism is just as much of a call out of something that you may feel was not handled correctly, as much as it is a call in to why you feel that way. With another video. As always, thank you for watching.